Right now, roughly 1 in 10 people watching this is holding their phone with their left hand. That ratio has not changed in 500,000 years. Not in ancient Egypt, not in prehistoric caves, not in the Amazon or the Arctic or any culture scientists have ever measured. 10%. Always 10%. Everywhere. That consistency is the mystery, because evolution doesn't keep useless traits. It doesn't preserve accidents. If left-handedness had no function, it should have faded out long ago, the way wisdom teeth are slowly fading now. It didn't, so something kept it here. But here is the strange part. Nobody fully agrees on what that something is. We have been studying handedness for over a century. We have named the gene, we have scanned the brains, we have run the evolutionary models. We have even run studies on chimpanzees and gorillas to see whether handedness is uniquely human. It is not, but the ratio is different. Great apes show a much weaker and less consistent population-level preference than humans do. In humans, the 10% figure is unusually sharp and unusually stable. That sharpness is itself a clue nobody has fully decoded. And the honest answer, from the scientists who know this field best, is we still don't completely know. That answer is more interesting than any fake certainty. Let's start with what we can measure. Handedness shows up early, very early. Ultrasound studies have captured fetuses as young as 10 weeks old showing a preference for sucking one thumb over the other. Not after birth, not after learning, before. That preference at 10 weeks predicts with about 90% accuracy which hand the child will prefer at age 10. The choice is being made before the brain has any experience of the world at all. In 2017, researchers at Ruhr University Bochum in Germany found that handedness doesn't even originate in the brain itself. It originates in the spinal cord. Gene activity in the spinal cord, specifically in the cervical section that controls arm movement, becomes asymmetric as early as 8 weeks into gestation. The brain follows, the spinal cord leads. So when people say handedness is a choice, or a habit, or something that can simply be trained away, the biology says otherwise. You were left-handed or right-handed before you had a functional brain to make that decision. Now here's the gene question. In 2019, a massive genetic study led by Dr. Akira Wiberg at the University of Oxford analyzed the DNA of nearly 400,000 people. They identified 4 genetic regions associated with left-handedness. 3 of those 4 regions are linked to proteins that shape the brain's structure, specifically the way the brain's white matter is organized. White matter is the network of fibers that carry signals between different regions of the brain. Its organization determines how quickly and efficiently those regions can communicate. Left-handed people, on average, show measurably different white matter organization in areas linked to language and hand control. Not worse, not better. Different in ways that are still being studied. But here is what those findings didn't produce. A single gene that simply switches on left-handedness. It's not one gene, it's not 2. It's a cluster of influences, each nudging the odds slightly, none of them deciding the outcome alone. And genetics explains only about 25% of the variation in handedness across the population. The remaining 75% is still being argued about. Environmental factors, hormonal exposure in the womb, random developmental noise, the position of the fetus, stress during pregnancy. All of these have been proposed. None of them fully explains the remaining gap. So why did evolution keep left-handedness at exactly 10% instead of letting it drift higher or eliminating it entirely? The leading theory comes from sports and from fighting. Psychologists Daniel Abrams and Mark Strogatz built a mathematical model in 2006 trying to answer exactly this question. Their model has 2 competing forces. The first force is cooperation. Human societies work because we learn to use tools the same way, shake hands the same way, operate machinery built for the majority. In a cooperative species, being different from the majority carries a cost. That cost pushes handedness toward one dominant side. The second force is competition, specifically combat. Left-handed fighters have a surprise advantage. They come from an angle the majority has not trained against. This is called the frequency-dependent advantage. It only works because left-handers are rare. If left-handers became common, the advantage would disappear. Right-handers would adapt. So the model predicts left-handedness should stabilize at whatever percentage balances the cooperation cost against the competition advantage. The model predicted roughly 10%. The data, across every culture ever measured, is roughly 10%. That match is striking, but it is a model, not a proof. And the fighting advantage theory has critics. Some researchers argue that ancient human societies were not violent enough for a fighting edge to matter at the population level. Others point to evidence that left-handers do not actually win more fights than right-handers in most combat sports when both sides are equally trained. The debate is still live. What is not debated is the evidence from prehistory. In 2019, a study in the Journal of Human Evolution analyzed scratch marks on prehistoric teeth. When early humans held food in one hand and cut it with a stone tool near their mouth, the resulting scratches on the teeth angled differently depending on which hand held the tool. It's a surprisingly precise method. The direction of the scratch tells researchers which hand was dominant without needing to find a skeleton holding a tool. They analyzed skulls going back 1.8 million years. The ratio of right-handed to left-handed scratches was approximately the same as it is today. 1.8 million years of consistent handedness in the archaeological record. Long before written language, long before organized sport, long before any environment that could have culturally trained a preference. The ratio was already there. There is one more layer to this that most people don't know about. The same gene variants associated with left-handedness are also associated with better verbal ability in left-handed individuals. And the asymmetry that produces handedness in the brain, that left-right division of function, is also what gives humans language. Language is almost always left hemisphere dominant. So is the control of the right hand. Some researchers believe handedness and language evolved together as part of the same developmental shift that made humans distinct from other primates. In that view, the question isn't just why are 10% of people left-handed? The question is, why did the human brain become asymmetric at all? And the answer might be that asymmetry is what makes a human brain fast enough to do what it does. A brain that divides its labor between hemispheres can run two processes in parallel. A symmetric brain runs them in series. The left hand, then, is not an accident or a variation. It is a clue. A trace of the same developmental event that gave humans speech and thought and the ability to ask questions about themselves. 10% of people carry a slightly different version of that trace, and after 500,000 years, a century of neuroscience, and a genome study of 400,000 people, we still cannot fully explain why. That is not a failure of science. That is a sign of how deep the question actually goes. The hand you write with was chosen before your first breath, by forces still being mapped, in a pattern that has held steady across every civilization that has ever existed. That is not a coincidence. That is something waiting to be understood. And every left-handed person alive today is carrying that 500,000-year-old signal in the hand they reach with first, every single morning, without ever being told to.